practicing this afternoon in my apartment, or this morning, I guess. And I realized that I could hear my neighbors talking. And then I realized that they could probably hear me, but that I was talking to myself in a regular rhythm and saying the same things over and over. Anyway, this is called Make Breakfast. Somebody stop the bombing. Somebody give the refugees a home. Somebody clean the water and make breakfast. Somebody build a bridge. Invite the neighbors for tea. Save the plastic bags. Don't throw them away. The lake won't freeze this winter, but it's not the end of the world. Like left luggage, we are lonely and modern, gone missing, but hopefully traceable. Somebody stop the bleeding or slow down the heart. Can you hear the heart beating over the street noise? Over 100 hearts beating here, and you can't hear them. Shh. You hear phones and television sets, but not the human heart. Not the start and not the finish. Not the yearning or the breaking. Because God knows. Broken playground in the schoolyard next to the highway. Garbage strewn against the fence. This is what they see every day, and this is the future, or maybe, if their dreams don't get paved over once again. Perhaps a teacher will make them sure they get fed, or someone will graduate, become a politician, and make sure you hear about this. Make sure that something gets done, because God knows no one listens to the poet. This is called Can We Bring the Lonely Home? It's for Chris Cornell, the leader, singer of Soundgarden, who died, killed himself a week ago. I don't need a film to arrest my life, lead me to question everything I believe. I don't think I need subtitles to underline my doubts and fears. I don't know if I can understand, go so quickly from euphoria to despair, to stand up in front of thousands and then end up all alone. I still want and need to say all the things that I have to say, and I imagine you did too. This one's called I Wrote You a Poem. It's a little bit lighter. I wrote you a poem. I knit you a sweater for when the nights get cold. I made you some soup. I left you my number for when the nights get cold. I held you closer. I made it a little bit better when the nights got cold. This is called Poetry 2017. Jeffrey, no one writes poetry anymore. It would have been so much better if you had said, Jeffrey, nobody builds bombs anymore. Those planes flying overhead are dropping poems. Those large guns are blasting poetry towards them who receive them and blast their own back. Underground bunkers and submarines are setting coordinates, figuring out how to best deliver poems for maximum effect. A young man will strap poems to himself and walk into a crowd and deliver them. There are sharpshooter haikus and megaton epics. In the UN and all the capitals, they're signing treaties to aid the proliferation of poetry. There are conventional poetries marching in conventional lines and guerrilla groups messing with the language. There are poetries rising out of trenches on Christmas Eve to share a drink and a game of soccer. There are nations increasing their poetry budgets, diplomats circling the globes collecting visa stamps of verse. And you, yes you, poetry wants you. I'm going to read a couple of poems from Memory and City, the recent chapbook. As you know, many will go home tonight or go to bed tonight without poetry, but for $4, you can make sure that they have poetry. Earlier we were discussing the Montreal Expos. This is a poem I wrote on the passing of Gary Carter, who was the back catcher for many years, very famous. Back in those days, years seemed to last forever. Back in those days, we didn't measure time, because back in those days, there were no years, only seasons of hockey, baseball, soccer. As far as we saw, there was no last year for a player, only last season. Back in those days, we chose our teams by their symbol, or the first game we attended, or perhaps the team our dads liked. A favorite team could be a family inheritance. And back in those days, your grandparents were lucky to be in Florida for spring training. It's a curious thing called the Grapefruit League. Back in those days, no Googling stats. We collected cards for all we needed to know. And we tried to take those cards by playing topsies, throwing them against a wall. It had its own rules. Back in those days, I had hat head because I only took my Expos cap off for the school picture. I had more hair. Back in those days, you felt anxious if you didn't get your favorite player's number when the coach handed out the sweaters. Back in those days, we didn't know that some people didn't like the Big O. Back in those days, you played for hours with a tennis ball and a souvenir bat. Back in those days, garage doors were the universal boards and backstop. Back in those days, you learned how to imitate the cheer of a crowd with your voice. Back in those days, we wanted it to last forever, and we still do. And the last one is called For Those Who Stay. It's a poem about having existential angst about being in Montreal. And no one else has ever gone through that except for me. Anyway, I wrote it. It starts off on a bus at 6:30 in the morning. At 6:30 a.m., light shines off the ice on the snowbank, the only light in the city. You can't see the cross from here. These days it seems you can't see the cross from anywhere. So I'm not sure where this light's coming from. The moon is too faint, no cars passing on this turnoff. At the next stop, dark figures are waiting silently. It's too cold to talk. Some mutter into cell phones on the bus. Though who you call at 6:30 a.m. is beyond me. The Expos are gone, the Olympics are gone. Oh city, you are an old beauty who no longer gets invited to parties. Your marble is plashed, your arch is crumbling. Some say it's a city of no future, a city of the past, where even the past is being destroyed. That nobody comes here to work but just do their own thing, perhaps school, and then move on. And the citizens are that married couple who feel like it's over. Can you moisten your lips in the bitter wind to kiss the city goodbye, to gravitate to another place of opportunity and sustenance, and then brag about your time in Montreal? Keeping your eye on the scene and the politics, keeping our eyes on the scene and the politics. City, you have drained skies in the summer, drained emotions in winter, drained bank accounts, drained all sense, and we've almost lost our mind at street corners, remembering when we were last here. Remembering when we last made something that mattered. And we're speaking fractured languages, and sometimes we laugh, and sometimes we raise voices, and sometimes we try, and sometimes we give up. Seems like there's too much heat in the summer, too cold in the winter, and franglais is an acceptable in-between, but there are more friends than enemies, more hope than fear, more parks than freeways, and more dreams than nightmares. Lost moments, lost points, that should not be all you think about. But sometimes the city is all you think about in history, in novel form, in transit. Reading the watch that ends the night, and they don't even know, and we don't even know, not most of us, what has gone down here before. Thank you.